Hail Marys, upsets, everything that could go crazy went pretty wild in week 4 of the Big 12. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thanks for joining us with another week of college football in the books. And yes, my picks blew. I will get that out of the way. Thank you for being here. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet subscribed to our channel as we cover the Big 12. I will say, with a little bit of bias, better than anybody else out there doing this. And if you haven't yet, drop us that 5-star rating and review. We so appreciate you doing that. So we'll get to the games, but first off, yes, my picks bombed out 0-3. Not mad about the Iowa State cover. I mean, they destroyed it against Arkansas State. Just got that one wrong. Matt Campbell doesn't usually do that. I can live with that. The other one that drives me a little nutty is TCU minus the points. I thought that was a lock. TCU, I'm not going to bet for weeks. They looked like garbage. And then the Baylor one burns me. I was on Baylor +2. It took a Hail Mary for me to lose that game, but that happens when you're having fun, putting a little action on college football. So let's get right to week 4, and let's begin with what happened in Boulder, Colorado, where it took a Hail Mary from Shedeur Sanders to send that game to overtime, where the Buffaloes beat the Bears 38-31. Listen, there's a lot of people that want to knock Shedeur Sanders. They want to rag on him. He's Deion's kid. He's just in it for the money and the fame, and he wants to be a rap star and everything else. Okay. He put that team on his back on Saturday night. Colorado had no business winning that game. And if it was not for Shedeur Sanders, they lose by 3 touchdowns. I get it. It's easy to rag on him. I don't know if he's an NFL quarterback or not. I just know that this is someone who led that team to victory, who put that team on its back, and that there is no way that Colorado is in that conversation against Baylor without Shedeur Sanders playing the way he did. He got sacked 8 times, but when it mattered most, he was clutch. This team was down 24-10, and they end up coming back to win the game. That shows a little bit of grit, some fight. I wasn't sure this team had that in them. So credit to Colorado. They fought back. The weather stunk. It's raining. Yes, they had a Hail Mary. Yes, there was some luck. Yes, Baylor, you can argue, blew the game, but Colorado won it. And they had a big defensive play against Dominic Richardson at the goal line to prevent a likely second overtime from getting underway. And that's the kind of fight you want to see from your team. Frankly, Colorado had more fight in them down the stretch than Baylor did. And I still don't understand Baylor rushing 5 players on that Hail Mary. I'm sitting there, I'm like, could you rush 2? Maybe 3. Maybe 3. Baylor's rushing 5 guys on that Hail Mary. That was the final play of the game. I don't know what Dave Aranda, who's a defensive whiz and has forgotten more about the defensive side of the football than I'll ever know, what he's doing rushing 5 guys on that play. That was ridiculous. And yes, we're not talking about it if Colorado doesn't get a little bit lucky. But you know what? I mean, you also create your own luck and you allow your own bad luck sometimes to happen. And that feels like exactly what happened to Baylor towards the end of this game. They should not have lost this thing, but they did. And they really couldn't get the running game going. Now, Baylor was the better team in the trenches, especially against Colorado's offensive line. I mentioned the 8 sacks, throw in I think it was 12 tackles for loss that Baylor had in Boulder, but the offensive line was not getting great push up front. You take out Sawyer Robertson's 9 carries for 82 yards, and he had that big 45-yard touchdown run, and Baylor on the night had like 32 rushes for 84 yards. That's what, 2.5 yards per carry? That's where Colorado was. Baylor could not really get it going with Dominic Richardson, Bryson Washington. They just couldn't do it. Now, I think Sawyer Robertson's the guy. I don't see him going back to DeQuan Finn anytime soon, based on, some solid passes I saw The touchdown pass to Hal Presley was really impressive. He hit Monterey Baldwin for a big one as well. 30-yard touchdown grab there. So I would roll with Sawyer Robertson, but this is the kind of loss for Baylor that can sting. And when you've got a head coach whose seat is already warm, maybe not hot, but warm, you wonder how a team recovers from this. You wonder how they handle a situation like this in hindsight. And that's one of those situations where I hope that Aranda can get back going, because I think this team can succeed under him. He's gotten this team. He's won a Big 12 championship here in Waco. But, man, that is as tough a loss as you are going to have, especially at this point in the season. And as Jeremy notes here, they had opportunities to put that game out of reach, and they simply did not do it. You're right. Absolutely right. So it's a team effort. It's cliche, but it's true in that case. But that one really stings. And for Colorado, it's their first Power 4 win since October 7th of last year. And now you got Colorado UCF that has some juice to it, and that's going to be on Big Fox. I think it'll be the, 3:30 Eastern time game coming up this weekend. Pretty wild stuff. So that was by far the craziest game of the weekend in the Big 12. Next up, let's talk about Utah and Oklahoma State. The Utes end up beating the Cowboys 22-19. And if you look at the box score, you're like, hey, the game was kind of close. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Oklahoma State was down 22-3. Alan Bowman put together a couple of touchdown drives at the end. They technically had a chance. You know, we've seen crazy things happen at Boone Pickens Stadium, but Utah controlled that game, controlled both sides of the ball. But just as much as anything else, Oklahoma State could not get anything going. For a team that's got a veteran offensive line and a quarterback who's on his 15th year, I'm sorry, but that's a terrible performance. Utah's got a good defense, but Oklahoma State's offense made them look like the 85 Bears. That is just ridiculous, the way that offense performed. And this team can't run block for jack. I mean, I'm looking at this game and I'm like, Ollie Gordon is a shell of what he was. And I can't sit here and say that it's all or even mostly Ollie Gordon's fault. 11 carries, 42 yards. He has had as pedestrian a start to the season as you would have from a guy who was, picked by many to be in New York City as a Heisman Trophy finalist, for crying out loud. But on the season, he had 126 rushing yards against South Dakota State. Since then, Arkansas, 49 yards, Tulsa, 41 yards, Utah, 49 or 42 yards. That is not the Ollie Gordon that many Oklahoma State fans expected, but it's not all on him. The offense just cannot get itself going. And to start the second half, Alan Bowman, as was noted on the radio broadcast, looked shell-shocked when he was put on the bench in favor of Garrett Rangel. Now, in hindsight, maybe you sit him for a drive to send a message, but Rangel got, I want to say, 4 drives in this game. And it was very evident early on, the offense was not going to do anything with him at quarterback. I think they had like 4 drives for 30 yards, something like that. I might be overestimating it, but he got way too many drives. It was very evident. You want to give him 2? Fine. Maybe at that point you go back to Bowman. He got 4 drives, and none of them went anywhere for the most part. So that didn't make any sense to me. I maybe if you want to send the message with 1, you do it. But more than that, I don't understand how you could possibly come to the conclusion that Garrett Rangel was going to give you a better opportunity to win that game in the second half than Alan Bowman, as bad as Bowman was early in that game. And I know Oklahoma State fans are all over Casey Dunn. I get it. I mean, I'm seeing the comments right now. I understand what you guys are feeling if you're an Oklahoma State fan. But wow. It's not just done. The players aren't getting it done either. See what I did there? And for Utah, I mean, Mike Gundy said it after the game. Like, they just are a really solid team. Mike Gundy basically said he got outcoached without saying he got outcoached. He's like, Utah, you don't see them, and they're not, like, physically overpowering. And some Utah fans might take that as a slight. But what he's really doing is crediting an incredible coaching job, an incredible staff, a team that has depth. Guys are in their place. They're where they need to be. And I didn't think that Isaac Wilson could walk in to Stillwater and win this game. And granted, he threw a couple of picks. He wasn't asked to do a ton. He didn't need to do a ton when you got Micah Bernard going off the way that he was. But he still, as a freshman, had to go into Stillwater, where the Cowboys have the second best home record since 2020 behind Alabama, and win a hard-fought game on the road. And as a freshman quarterback, yes, the brother of Zach Wilson, that's what he did. And that should not be understated. That should not be underappreciated, because that's a big, big deal. And now you know why that line was swinging all over the place during the week. It was Oklahoma State -2. It was Utah -2. It was Oklahoma State -2. The line was swinging 4 or 5 points either way throughout the week. Now, Oklahoma State's defense did overall have a pretty solid day. Trey Rucker is turning out to be, one of the best defensive players in the Big 12, but they have got to get the offense figured out. And now you go to Manhattan coming up here in just a few days with arguably your season on the line. And you can say that for both of those teams after what happened on Saturday in the Big 12. Let's go to the next game. We'll just weave this all together. Kansas State getting its doors blown off as they went on the road and played BYU, who is now 4-0 on the early season. How about those Cougars? How you feeling, BYU fans? Wow. You guys have got to be feeling real good right about now. BYU with the 38-9 victory as 7-point underdogs. Now, this is one of those games I said I was going to stay away from because I didn't know how it was going to play out. But I can tell you right now, I did not see 38-9 in BYU's favor coming. But what did I warn you about over the last couple of weeks? How does Avery Johnson look, and how does he do when he's asked to throw the ball in a tough road environment to win a game? And we saw the answer on Saturday, and the answer is not well. Now, he's a, first-year starter, redshirt freshman. So he's very early in his career. But this is one of those spots where Avery Johnson had to try to bring this team back and help this team win this game in a very difficult environment. That place in Provo was going nuts on Saturday. It looked incredible on television. I'm so jealous for those of you who were there, and it just made me itch that much more to want to get out there. But I'm glad. I thought about getting down the Stillwater. It turned out my oldest daughter had pneumonia this weekend. That's also why I'm a little late on the show this weekend. So I'm glad I didn't commit to anything, but that's just life when you got 3 kids under 6 right now. So I know many of you, if you're in that phase of life or you've recently gotten out of that phase of life, you appreciate that. So thanks for bearing with me. But man, I got to get to Provo as soon as I possibly can because that place was rocking. And it was all facets, right? It was offense, although Jake Retzlaff didn't have to do a ton. He was efficient, didn't have, the big mistake, and the defense really carried the way. Now, I know some Kansas State fans want to get a little ticky-tacky on some of the early officiating calls that might have wiped the touchdown off the board on that first scoring drive and some other things, but listen, BYU controlled this game. And when Kansas State is getting smoked on special teams, when they are getting hit with 90-yard punt returns for a guy who's running towards his own end zone when he picks up the ball, that just tells you it's BYU's night. It was not Kansas State's night. There was not an officiating call that was going to change that game. And BYU had everything going its way. And you know what? Kansas State was sloppy. I mean, they lost the turnover battle significantly. What did it end up being? Something like 3-0 on the turnover battle. And that's the kind of stuff that comes back to bite you. If you're Kansas State, got hit hard in the penalty area as well. So that is one of those that you just have to forget about. But it sets up an enormous game in Manhattan this week between Kansas State and Oklahoma State, which we'll talk about throughout the week. And I will note some changes coming at the end of this show as well that some of you have asked for, and I'm happy to make this change and do this for you guys. So I'll talk about that at the end of the show here. But BYU being 4-0 and now ranked in the top 25 this week is the biggest surprise of the early Big 12 season. BYU, their wins continue to look better as well. That SMU win, holding that team to 15 points, looks pretty damn good after what SMU did to TCU on Saturday. And they are now top 20 in the country in points allowed per game at just 12.9. This BYU defense is for real. And, the offense, I'm not as confident in, but I'll tell you right now with the offense is only going to have to do so much if the defense can keep it up the way they've been playing. And I'm not sitting here saying they're going to hold the season at 12 points allowed per game, but man, you know what? You ride this thing for now. They're getting turnovers. They're confident. They got some swagger. And when they've got that home crowd behind them, this team is going to be very difficult. They go to Waco this weekend, first road test in the Big 12, and then it's Arizona before Oklahoma State, and then it's tough road trips at UCF, at Utah. So BYU does not have an easy Big 12 draw. Some are easier than others. BYU is not an easy draw. But still, this team is very possibly 2 games away from being 6-0 and bowl eligible by mid-October, which nobody would have expected before the season. I mean, if you did expect that, then you're either the biggest homer in the world or go buy yourself a lottery ticket right now. Now, Avery Johnson's going to be okay. I believe that. But this is part of growing pains for a young quarterback. It's why I said before the season, I thought that some of the hype around Kansas State was getting to be too much and that this team's year was going to be 2025, not 2024. And that wasn't intended to be a slight on the program or anybody, but these are the things that happen when you're a first-year starting quarterback, even when you have the hype of a guy like Avery Johnson and the skills of a guy like Avery Johnson. So that's where Kansas State is at right now, but I feel bad for you if you're a K-State fan. You stayed up till, 1 a.m. to watch your team get its doors blown off. You might have called it a night early. That probably wouldn't have been the worst idea. But, man, that was a late night for a lot of you Kansas State faithful. So next up, let's go to, all right, let's go to this game just because there was a lot of drama in it as well. TCU getting crushed by SMU 66-42. What an embarrassment for the Horned Frogs that game was. An embarrassment for Sonny Dykes, an embarrassment for the TCU football program, and for a team that is 2 seasons removed from getting to a national championship. I don't know how it can get much worse than this right now for the Horned Frogs. Sonny Dykes, of course, used to coach SMU. He's now getting his doors blown off by the guy that replaced him. He's getting ejected from the game. He's got to walk by the SMU student section who's giving him a hard time, and he's got to watch the second half from the locker room. And then you've got Kendall Briles, the de facto head coach for TCU, and, of course, the Briles last name, and that was always a bit of a controversial hire. I never thought it was something that should have been all that controversial because Kendall Briles is his own man, but I get it. You've got a Briles as a de facto head coach at TCU. We all know the rivalry between TCU and Baylor. That's just an awkward situation. And TCU fans, at least on social media, appear totally fed up. And I get it, but I'm here to tell you, Sonny Dykes is not going anywhere. Barring like a 3-9 season, Sonny Dykes is not going anywhere. But there was an admission from Sonny Dykes after the game that's very concerning to me. Sonny Dykes said after the game that he believes, or he's concerned, that the UCF loss is going to linger for this team like the Colorado loss did last season. Remember, last year, TCU lost the opener to Colorado. That put Deion on the map. TCU was a 3-touchdown favorite in that game. They were coming off a trip to the Natty, and they lost to Colorado. Deion's first game in Boulder, or with Colorado. The game was in Fort Worth. And we talked to Sonny Dykes, and this was well noted throughout the season. He thought that Colorado game lingered throughout the year. He said now this week or after the game, he's worried that UCF loss where they were up 21 and lost last week to UCF could be similar and linger. It's bad. I appreciate the honesty, but it's bad when the head coach is admitting a really soul-crushing loss for a second straight year could be lingering within his program. And then you go out there and you get your doors blown off by your crosstown rival who you mocked all week with the ACC stuff, the CW stuff. And I love the mockery, but to then lay the egg that you laid in this game and have all the mistakes. I mean, my goodness. This game was mistake-riddled from the get-go. TCU, giving up a fumble return for a touchdown, a punt return touchdown. I mean, goodness gracious. It was just an embarrassing start to the game, and it only got worse from there. I mean, the penalty margin was atrocious for TCU. 14 penalties, 135 yards, 5 turnovers. You close your eyes for a minute in the opening minutes of that game, and you're down 17-zip. That is as bad of a loss for the coaching staff as it is anything else. The coaching staff is where I put a bulk of the blame here. TCU has good players. They've always recruited pretty well. They do decently in the transfer portal, but this now looks like it's going to be 2 straight years where TCU is going to be lucky to be bowl eligible after, yes, getting a few breaks. You got to get lucky to have the season they had 2 years ago, but getting some breaks and then getting to a national championship. But Sonny Dykes is not going to be going anywhere. I mean, barring some kind of collapse, he is not going anywhere anytime soon. So if you think that he is, that's just a misunderstanding of, I think, where this program is. But it's fine to be frustrated. You have every right to be frustrated if you're a TCU fan. Because the team between the second half last week and all 4 quarters on Saturday against SMU, who you used to call little brother, has looked like hot garbage. So that is understandably a frustrating loss for TCU. Next up, let's talk about West Virginia and Kansas. West Virginia beats the Jayhawks 32-28. And for West Virginia, boy, did Neil Brown need this one. West Virginia was down in this game by double digits, and they come back to win it in the fourth quarter. The same thing that this team did to itself, shooting itself in the foot last week against Pittsburgh, they returned the favor against Kansas. And if Neil Brown had lost this game and dropped to 1-3, I'm telling you, there are people who would have been all set to fire him. Heck, there still are people in Morgantown set to fire him. But as he said after the game, we have Garrett Green and they don't. And that did prove to be a difference maker late in this game. Here's what I don't understand, though. It seems like sometimes West Virginia does not want to give Garrett Green the freedom to really freelance. And when I watch this guy, that's sometimes when he's at his best. I mean, he had some big third down conversions with his legs on those 2 touchdown drives towards the end of the game. He had, I want to say it was like a 3rd and 6, maybe, right near midfield, where Garrett Green uses his legs effectively to get the first down. Might have been on the last touchdown drive that ultimately put West Virginia on top. He threw a couple of big third downs as well. Cole Taylor he found for a couple of big plays on those last 2 drives. But when Garrett Green is playing loose, he's playing better football. But it's like they don't let him play loose until the game's out of reach, or I don't know. It's just weird. But I'm like, why can't we get more of that? If I'm Neil Brown, that's what I'm looking for, because you rave about Garrett Green. You talk about how great he is, right? But then let's get with Chad Scott, the OC, and say, more of that, please. More of Garrett Green. Just having a little bit of a street ball approach to what he's doing at quarterback, because it works. Not only is it fun, but it seems like it works better for West Virginia. And just keep that momentum going. Keep the pace going, right? that 2-minute drill offense looks really good for the Mountaineers. So I get it. You can't do it all game, although Mike Leach would argue you could rest in peace. But that is so frustrating because you win the game, but you're wondering where the heck that's been for the first, 55 minutes of football when you're watching that thing on Saturday afternoon. We had another 90-minute weather delay, second one of those we've dealt with in Morgantown this season already. It happened in the Penn State game, and then it happened in this game on Saturday. So did that bring back momentum to West Virginia? I don't know. I mean, the crowd had filtered out, it seemed like, in large part. That was disappointing, but I get it. I mean, how long are you going to sit there and drink beer before you say, hey, I'm soaking wet, I'm going to go home, we're losing anyway? So I don't blame fans for doing what you got to do in that situation, but I don't think that helped out West Virginia at all. I just think they finally got the offense clicking there at the end. Now for Kansas, they fall to 1-3. They're 0-1 in the Big 12. I will start with the positives here, and that is that Jalen Daniels did look better. Now you're going to say, look at the box score and be like, what are you talking about? 15 of 25, $184, QBR of 40. I understand. But once again, based on what I've seen the last couple of weeks, there were throws, there were plays where Daniels looked more comfortable, like the rust is getting knocked off game by game, week by week. And it was something that we talked a lot about in the offseason that, frankly, I didn't think enough people were talking about. As if Jalen Daniels, after really not playing competitive football for the better part of 2 years, was going to show up and just be lights out Heisman Trophy finalist. And that's not how it works. And he was always a guy who was injury riddled, who was going to be a little hesitant this season, it seemed. And that's what you're getting right now from Jalen Daniels. He's still hesitant. He's still getting bottled up in large part. You saw that play out. West Virginia was able to get some pressure on him pretty effectively at times. So he still is not what people expected him to be. But if you're looking for the silver lining, I did see progress and confidence growing for Jalen Daniels and getting more comfortable with some of his wide receiver targets, notably Luke Grimm, but also Lawrence Arnold. Jared Casey was also in the mix as well. Skinner, they've got some solid pieces out there on the outside. Daniels just has to do a better job getting them the ball. But all in all, he's making strides. Now, you're sitting there at 1-3, so what's that really worth? I get it. You're frustrated if you're a KU fan. But let's be honest as well. KU has blown these games. I look at this, all right? This is an incredible piece of data. I've got a couple of tidbits here for you on KU. You ready for this? Kansas has been outscored 48-17 in the final 5 minutes of halves this season. That is on the coaching staff. Outscored 48-17 in the final minute of halves this season. That is horrible. And Kansas was in a position to win the Illinois game, to win the UNLV game, and to win this game against West Virginia. You know how they have the in-game odds you can track at ESPN? So at one point, KU had an 80% chance to beat Illinois. At one point, they had a 91% chance to beat UNLV. And they also had a 91% chance in that fourth quarter yesterday, based on the in-game odds, to beat West Virginia. They lost all three. If you take the high points of each of those games, the odds of Kansas going 0-3 would be 0.17%. That is horrible. And by the way, that data point comes from Derek Johnson. He is a Kansas-based broadcaster I saw on X yesterday. Follow us there at Heartland_CS. We are on X. We are on Facebook. Search us, Heartland College Sports, on Instagram. And we're even now on TikTok as well. So just search Heartland College Sports in all those places, and you'll get these little tidbits that we find from other folks or from ourselves as well. 0.17% chance. That is horrible. And that comes back to the coaching staff. So it has been a tough year in Lawrence. There's no doubt about it. Now they've got a home game against TCU, but it's not really a home game. It's at Arrowhead Stadium. And that's something as well that was overlooked this season, not having true home games for Kansas. And we'll see because, boy, TCU and Kansas both desperately need to get back into the win column coming up this weekend. Texas Tech beating Arizona State 30-22. Let's dive into that game for a few minutes. I don't know what Texas Tech is. Like, maybe you feel differently if you're a Tech fan, but I don't know what this team is. I don't. Defense looks like hot garbage all year, but they keep Cam Scatterbo in check yesterday. They get Sam Levitt to turn the ball over. He looked rattled in a tough road environment. Tech fans showed out very well at the Jones AT&T Stadium, and Texas Tech is sitting there at 3-1, and you're like, man, that's a pretty ugly 3-1, but you're 3-1, right? So you're not going to complain about it. If you told Tech fans a month ago they'd be 3-1 and didn't give them any details about the Abilene Christian game or the Washington State game, Tech fans will probably be like, "Yeah, okay, sure, I'm good with that. Sign me up. Like, I'm happy at 3-1. I'm not going to can't be upset based on where the program's been for the last 15 years at 3-1, right? But it just feels like a 3-1 where you kind of are like, I've got a little bit of throw up in my mouth, but then I also have reasons for optimism. It's very weird. I admit it's a very strange feeling if you're a Tech fan. But Arizona State is also coming back down to earth a little bit. I mentioned each of their wins look worse by the week because of just who they played. Mississippi State stinks. Wyoming's awful. So now you're getting into the Big 12 play. And I still think there'll be a thorn in the side of many Big 12 teams. But that's why when I do my power rankings, they fluctuate a lot based on the updated data points that we get. Arizona State's going to be more competitive in this conference than a lot of people thought they were going to be. Are they going to win a lot of games based on the team I'm seeing right now? Probably not. Can they win a few? Absolutely. Can they be in a lot of their games, if not most of their games? No doubt about it. But you saw and you have seen a running game that has come back down to earth a little bit. Although Cam Scatterbo is doing it all now, receiving, rushing, 6 catches, 117 yards. So all in all, there's still a lot of reason to feel like this team is going to compete and can get itself to a bowl game this year. Listen, they went 3-0 in the non-con. They just have to go 3-6 in Big 12 play to get to bowl eligibility, and that would be a huge step in the right direction under Kenny Dillingham, no doubt about it. So that's one of those deals that you look at and you say, okay, we're still taking steps in the right direction. And for Texas Tech, you're in the win column. You're 3-1. We're still trying to figure out what exactly this team is. But now you've got Cincinnati. And here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons. When I go back and I look at my projections, I thought Texas Tech was going to get off to a very good start. The schedule is very soft for the Red Raiders to open up Big 12 play. Arizona State, Cincinnati, who looked better, but it was Houston. We'll get to that game coming up. At Arizona, Baylor, TCU. Those are the first 5 games for Texas Tech. When you balance all those games out, that is as easy an opening 5 games as any team I've seen in the Big 12 Conference have. So that scheduling for the start of the season here benefits the Red Raiders in a big way. And, you get 3 of those 5 games at home, by the way. One of them came on Saturday. So all in all, you got to sit there if you're a Tech fan and feel pretty good about things right now. There's no doubt about it. Now, last up, as we talk about, we got 2 more games to talk about here. We've got Cincinnati blasting Houston 34-0. For the Bearcats, they shut out Houston, first ever Big 12 home win, and they have now matched the win total from 2023. Of course, they should be 4-0, but I'm not going to talk about that Pittsburgh game right now because why do that to Cincinnati fans who are enjoying a 34-0 win? You can't ask for a better performance efficiency-wise from Brendan Sorsby and Corey Kenner and just kind of that 1-2 punch that you're seeing from the key offensive weapons with Cincinnati. So you've got to like where things are going there. And then, defensively. Now, Houston's not a good offensive team, so you take it all with a grain of salt. But when you hold Donovan Smith to 11 of 16 for 73 yards and you blow this thing open real early at home in front of that crowd at Nippert Stadium, you know what? You get an interception. You turn that into a touchdown. You force another punt. You turn that into a touchdown. And it felt like this game was over very, very quickly. So Cincinnati does look like it's making strides under Scott Satterfield. You've got to be pleased with that if you're a Cincinnati fan. And if you're a Houston fan, I don't think you look at this and say, oh, my goodness. Now, it's going to be a long season. But I don't think you look at this and say, this is anything different than what you expected. Willie Fritz is a program builder. It is going to take time, though, to build this program. Ask West Virginia. Dana Holgorsen knows how to burn this thing to the ground, okay? He does. He left West Virginia in a very bad spot when he went to Houston. He went to Houston, and he's going to leave Willie Fritz, and he did leave Willie Fritz in a very bad spot as well. So this is going to take time. But I genuinely trust Willie Fritz turning this thing around. But, you're going to have to look at this season and look for the small wins and be like, hey, can we play Utah and Kansas State close later in the season? Can we get a tough road win at Kansas coming up in a month? Can we see the progression that we want to see from this team? You've got Iowa State at home this weekend. Then you go to TCU. Then you've got the bye week. It's all about making progress. And I know that's not what fans want to hear, but that was always going to be the case for this Houston team. And there's not much more to say about that game on Saturday in Cincinnati, outside of the fact that it was a hideous one for the Cougars, and the Bearcats look great and are trending in the right direction. And last but not least, Iowa State crushing Arkansas State 52-7. Matt Campbell ties the record for wins in Iowa State football history. So congratulations. He could break that next week. Probably will break it in Houston next week. But this is a game that, Matt Campbell usually doesn't do this to his opponents, but he blew out Arkansas State a week after they lost by 10 points at Michigan. So Iowa State, I believe, is going to start getting a lot of love in the days ahead. I saw that CBS's Jerry Palm had them as a team that he believes is going to be in the college football playoff. I think he had them as like the 8th seed in the college football playoff, the at-large. He had Utah as the team that would win the Big 12. And I like this Iowa State team. However, they haven't played a Big 12 game yet. They looked like hot garbage for a bulk of that Iowa game until, halfway through the third quarter. So I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I always know that Matt Campbell teams progress and get better as the year goes on. The weapons are there. Rocco Beck comes into his own. There's no doubt about it. I trust him in big spots. The running game has options, which we haven't really thought about Iowa State having options in the running game. They may have the best 1-2 punch at wide receiver in the Big 12 in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. And it was, by the way, Benjamin Brahmer that had a big game on Saturday. So there are weapons all over the field, and, we know what that defense is going to do under John Heacock. But can we get into Big 12 play a little bit here? All right? Can we just get ourselves to that level first? Probably going to blow out Houston, and then it's Baylor, West Virginia, UCF, Texas Tech. I mean, right now, when you look at the Iowa State schedule, based on teams currently ranked, they don't play a ranked team until November 23rd. Now, UCF could be ranked in the month when they play them. Who knows about Texas Tech in early November? But based on where things stand right now, they end the season at Utah, home to Kansas State, the only teams currently ranked on the Iowa State schedule the rest of the way. And they should get a couple of, I think, comfortable wins here the next 2 weeks against Houston and Baylor before they go on the road to West Virginia, which will be a tricky one. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here and joining us as a part of the show. Would you hit that subscribe button? If you haven't yet, come on. We're a month into the season, and I know there are thousands of you watching who have not yet subscribed on YouTube, on iTunes, on Spotify. Would you do that for us, please? Come on. Way to help the show. Thank you guys so much. Leave a comment, hit the thumbs up, and drop us a 5-star rating and review. We do the show for you. We don't ask you for anything except for that. And also check out the Heartland College Sports Forums. They are free. The Big 12 conversations are flowing, and we'll see you over there. Have a great week. We got a lot of content coming your way this week. Go Big 12.